Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So here I'm in Jermyn Street, London, which is the main street for gentlemen's outfitters in the Commonwealth. And behind me is a statue of Beau Brummell. And he's got pride of place here because he was an early fashion icon, or perhaps the very first, certainly amongst men. So his name was actually George Bryan Brummell, but since his school days known as Beau Brummell, B-E-A-U, as in the French word for handsome. And there you can see him accoutred in his typical style. And obviously the cane is an essential part of his paraphernalia. You see the top hat, he's not wearing his topper. Has he doffed it to someone? He's looking rather pensive there, wearing a stock, which is this curious type of cravat. Anyway, so Brummell was born in London in 1778. His father had been secretary to the Earl of Guildford as Prime Minister. That Earl of Guildford was better known as Lord North, the chap who was Prime Minister throughout most of the American Revolution. So Lord North doesn't have the best reputation. So Brummell's origins were rather lowly. Certainly his grandfather had started out as a servant, but become very affluent. His father had various clerical positions in the civil service. Back in those days, the civil service did not open itself to competition. There were no exams. It was really all the basis of patronage, personal recommendations. It was jobs for the boys. Bob was your uncle. So his father, as a teenager, made a positive impression on the Earl of Liverpool, who then became Prime Minister. So that's why he rose. No, sorry. The first Earl of Liverpool, not the Prime Minister, that was the second Earl of Liverpool. Anyway, so Brummell, he largely grew up in Berkshire at Donington Manor, where his father bought a country seat when his pater retired. So Brummell went to Eton, where he was distinguished academically, though he wasn't a King's Scholar, and he also played cricket to a very high standard. So it was then he really began to make his mark as someone who was very stylish. And there had been people who sort of had dressed as les incroyables around this time in the 1790s, just after the French Revolution. And that had been going on in France as well, with high heels for men, with heavy makeup, lipstick, rouge for men, the white powdered wigs and so on. He went in for a more understated sort of style, and he said, if you want to be elegant, you must not be noticed. I haven't got him verbatim on that one. So he went up to Oxford, where he distinguished himself again, and he composed Latin poesy. So he entered some of his stanzas for this for the Chancellor's Prize for Latin verse. He came second, beaten only by Edward Coppleston, who later became is provost of Oriel College, the same one that he went to, Oriel. So then he left after only a year. He got to university at the age of 15, which I know people went to university younger back then, but still that was extraordinary to go to university at 15, even in the 18th century. So he never graduated. He came down to London, was really just a man about town. He then became an officer in the 10th Hussars. Hussars were a type of cavalry. They were modelled on Hungarian cowboys from Nagy Alfold, remembering that Hungary was part of the Austrian Empire at the time. So Hussars were armed with sabres. They were not lancers. And he was a cornet. That's the lowest officer's rank there. But his military duties were not unduly onerous, and it allowed him plenty of time for socialising, for shopping, and he just wanted to live in high society. When he was a very young man, he inherited £22,000, which was a very tidy sum. Back then, you could put at least 2 zeros in the end to give you the current values. Anyway, so he was well known for his style, and he really was a trendsetter. And someone asked him, how do you manage to dress well? And he said, it can be tolerably attempted on 1,000 a year. I don't remember the exact number of pounds, was it 1,000 or whatever it was, but certainly it was an